All right, settle in, because you're not going to believe this one. Or maybe you will, if you've ever had the misfortune of tangling with a homeowners association. Those folks can take a perfectly good day and curdle it faster than milk in a Texas heat wave. My name's Hank Johnson, and this here's the story of how the Whispering Pines Estates HOA tried to fence me in, and I ended up charging them at the gate. The sun's barely cleared the mesquite trees, already promising a scorcher of a Tuesday, and I'm perched on a surprisingly comfortable lawn chair, the kind with the little cup holder, sipping on lukewarm coffee from my battered thermos. Next to me, a brand new, gleaming, and if I do say so myself, rather official-looking toll gate is blocking the only paved access road into the hallowed grounds of Whispering Pines Estates. The sign, hand-painted on a sturdy piece of plywood last night with Blue, my old border collie, supervising, reads, "Hank's Highway, pay up or ride the dirt. $10 access fee." It's not exactly the retirement plan I had in mind, running a toll booth at the end of my own driveway, but desperate times, you know? The screech of tires on asphalt is my first cue. Predictable as a rooster at dawn, Brenda McMillan's pristine white SUV, the kind that's never seen a speck of mud, slams to a halt, mere inches from my masterpiece of repurposed gate hardware. Her window glides down with an expensive hum. "Hank," her voice could etch glass. "What in the Sam Hill is this monstrosity?" I take a slow sip of coffee. "Mornin', Brenda. Beautiful day, ain't it? Call this here an access facilitation station. $10, please. Or 20 if you want the express pass. That gets you a smile, and I won't ask how your petunias are doing." Brenda's face, already a shade of angry pink, deepens to a rather alarming purple. "You can't be serious. You're blocking the road." "Well now, Brenda," I say, calm as a cucumber in a snowstorm, "this here stretch of road, the part your fancy SUV is currently occupying, happens to be on my property. Always has been. Just collecting a little user fee. Maintenance, you know. Wear and tear." Behind her, a Lexus lays on its horn. Then a BMW joins the chorus. It's like a symphony of entitled frustration. Good, let 'em sing. "It wasn't like I wanted to run a toll road," I mutter, mostly to myself, though Blue, lying in the shade of my umbrella, thumps his tail in agreement. Heck, I got cows to look after, fences to mend. But when Brenda and her band of beige-loving busybodies decided my century-old ranch entrance was suddenly trespassing on HOA common area after they paved right over my easement without so much as a howdy-do, well, a man's gotta do what a man's gotta do, especially when they put up their own fancy gate locking me out of my own damn road to my own damn ranch. A fella in the Lexus, some slick-haired type I recognize from his habit of walking his poodle in little booties, leans out. "This is illegal. I'm calling my lawyer. I'm calling the police." "Go right ahead," I say, gesturing with my thermos. "He'll need $10 to get through too, unless he's walking. Good luck with that in this heat. Tell him to bring exact change. I ain't set up for credit cards just yet. Small business, you understand." Brenda is practically vibrating. "Gary!" she shrieks, and her husband, Gary, a man whose spine seems to have been replaced by a particularly flexible garden hose, scurries out of the passenger seat. He always looks like he's just been told his prize-winning begonias have been trampled. "Now, Hank," Gary begins, wringing his hands, "let's be reasonable." "Reasonable was last week, Gary." I cut him off, my voice firm but even. "When I tried to talk to y'all about paving my land, when I showed you the property lines, when I asked you not to put up that ridiculous gate that cuts me off from my own main entrance. This is what happens after reasonable takes a long walk off a short pier. $10. A few more cars have piled up. The symphony of horns is getting louder. One brave soul in a pickup, probably a contractor heading into Whispering Pines, actually leans out and waves a $10 bill. "Just trying to get to work, buddy," he calls. I nod. Appreciate it. I take his money, put it in the old metal cash box I found in the barn, and with a bit of a grunt, I swing the gate open for him. Then I swing it shut again, right in front of Brenda's bumper. The clang is remarkably satisfying. "See, Brenda," I say sweetly. "Commerce. It's the American way." Her jaw works silently for a moment. Then, with a sound that's half growl, half sob, she digs in her purse, shoves a 10 into my hand, and guns the engine the second the gate is open enough for her to scrape through. I don't offer her the express pass smile. She didn't pay for it. One by one, with varying degrees of outrage and muttered threats, they pay. Some try to argue. Some try to bargain. One lady even tries to offer me a zucchini from her garden. "Appreciate the thought, ma'am," I tell her. "But zucchini don't pay for road repairs or emotional distress. That'll be $10. By the time the morning rush hour into Whispering Pines is over, my cash box is looking surprisingly healthy. Blue's even got a few extra biscuits out of it. Maybe this toll road gig ain't so bad after all. It sure beats arguing with a brick wall, which is what talking to that HOA usually feels like. This way, at least the brick wall is paying me for the privilege. It wasn't always like this, you know? This ranch, the Rocking H, has been in my family for 4 generations. My great-grandpappy, Josiah, settled this land when it was nothing but scrub and coyotes. He carved out a life here with his bare hands and a stubborn streak a mile wide. I like to think I inherited some of that stubbornness. Comes in handy. For decades, the Rocking H was just here. We had our peace, our quiet. The main road into the ranch was a dirt track, sure, but it was our dirt track. An easement clear as day on every map and deed in the county courthouse. Then, about 15 years back, some developer bought up the parcel next door. Suddenly, Whispering Pines Estates started sprouting like mushrooms after a spring rain. Big identical houses packed in tight, with manicured lawns and rules about everything from the color of your mailbox to the acceptable decibel level of your wind chimes. At first, they were just a distant hum, a bit of construction noise, a few more cars on the county road. Then the letters started. Polite at first, typed on fancy letterhead. "Dear Mr. Johnson," I'd read, sitting on the porch swing with Blue at my feet. "The Whispering Pines Homeowners Association would like to gently remind you that your northern fence line, which abuts our community, is in a state of disrepair that does not align with the aesthetic standards of our neighborhood." "Blue," I'd say, scratching his ears. "They think my fence is too rustic. It's a barbed wire fence, for crying out loud. It's supposed to keep 300-pound cows from wandering into their petunia patches. What do they want, lace curtains on it?" Then it was my rooster, old Foghorn. Apparently, his crowing at 5 a.m. was disrupting the tranquil enjoyment of their properties. Tranquil enjoyment. These were folks who probably thought nature was something you watched on a screensaver. The biggest stink, though, was always the manure. Can't have a ranch without cows, and you can't have cows without manure. It's just a fact of life. But according to Whispering Pines, the occasional whiff of honest farm air was negatively impacting their property values. I suggested they invest in some heavy-duty clothespins. That didn't go over too well. Still, it was mostly minor squabbles, background noise. Annoying, but manageable. Until last spring. That's when Brenda McMillan got herself elected HOA president. Brenda, who, I swear, must iron her yoga pants and alphabetize her spice rack. She decided Whispering Pines needed upgrades, and the first upgrade on her list was paving that shared dirt access road, the one that, for its first 100 yards or so, ran squarely across the edge of my property. I saw the surveyors out there one morning, went over to have a chat. "Mornin'," I said. "Just so you know, that first stretch there, up to that old oak, that's my land. Got an easement for access, same as I do for the rest of it, but it's deeded Rocking H property. The surveyor, a young fella just trying to do his job, looked uncomfortable. Our plans from the HOA show this as community access, sir. That evening, I tried talking to Brenda and Gary. Spread my deeds and plat maps out on their pristine patio table, right next to a bowl of decorative and probably inedible fruit. Look here, I said, tracing the lines with a calloused finger. This is my property line. You're planning to pave over my land. Gary just blinked. Brenda gave a tight little smile. Now, Hank, she said, in that condescending tone she reserves for people she considers intellectually inferior, which is pretty much everyone. Those are very old papers, aren't they? Things change. We're simply improving the community access for everyone, making it smoother, cleaner. Improving it by claiming my land, Brenda? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. That's a new one on me. And what about the fact that this is my main way in and out of my ranch? You gonna ask my permission before you start tearing it up? She waved a dismissive hand. It's a community benefit, Hank. Progress. Progress, my left foot. A week later, the bulldozers rolled in. They didn't just pave the road, they widened it, put in fancy curbs, the whole shebang, right over my property line without so much as a by your leave. And then, the crowning glory. They installed a gate. A big wrought iron electronic gate, complete with a keypad and a smug little sign that said, Whispering Pines Estates, Private Access. And just like that, my main entrance, the one my family had used for 100 years, was blocked. To get to my own ranch, I was supposed to use a winding, rutted, often mud-bogged dirt track that snaked around the back of my property, a track that was near impassable half the year. Or, presumably, I could beg them for the gate code. I was spitting mad. I talked to a lawyer, a good old boy named Bill down in the county seat. Bill looked over my papers, whistled. Well, Hank, he said, they've definitely overstepped. That easement is clear. And paving your land without permission? That's trespass and conversion of property. But suing an HOA, it's like wrestling a pig in mud. It's messy, it's expensive, and, at the end of it, you're both dirty, and the pig probably enjoyed it. So I sat on my porch for a few days, stewing. Watched those Whispering Pines folks zipping in and out of their fancy new gate, using that smooth new road they'd essentially stolen a piece of. Blue would lay his head on my knee, whining softly, like he knew I was troubled. They think they can just roll over me, Blue, I said one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky all shades of orange and purple. Think I'm just some dumb old rancher they can push around? I picked up my own set of deeds, the ones showing that first 100 yards of their new paved entrance was, in fact, my land. An idea, a beautiful, ornery, and downright hilarious idea, started to take root. Well, Blue, I said, a slow grin spreading across my face. If they want to play gatekeeper on my access, maybe I'll just show 'em how the game is really played. If this here stretch is mine, then it's my rules, and my road. And roads, my friend, cost money. I spent the next day in the barn with some old lumber, a can of black paint, and some gate hinges I'd salvaged years ago. Blue offered moral support, mostly by getting underfoot and wagging his tail. By nightfall, Hank's Highway and its access facilitation station were ready for their grand debut. If they wanted to use my land to get to their precious, exclusive enclave, they were going to pay the toll. Every single time. The first few days of the Hank's Highway toll operation were, shall we say, eventful. After Brenda's dramatic exit, word spread through Whispering Pines like wildfire in a dry pasture. Most folks paid, grumbling and fuming, but they paid. They had to. The alternative was that god-awful backtrack, and I knew for a fact at least 2 of those low-slung sports cars wouldn't make it past the first pothole. My cash box was getting heavier, Blue was getting fatter on bonus biscuits. And my entertainment level? Sky high. Of course, Brenda wasn't going to take this lying down. On the third morning, just as I was settling in with my coffee, a county sheriff's cruiser pulled up. Out stepped 2 deputies. One was older, with a seen-it-all weariness in his eyes, Deputy Miller. The other was younger, greener, with a crisp uniform and an eager look, Deputy Davis. Brenda was right behind them, practically vibrating out of her skin. "Officers, thank heavens you're here," she declared, pointing a trembling finger at me. "This man, this highwayman is extorting us. He's blocking a public thoroughfare. He's causing a nuisance. Arrest him." I just took another sip of coffee. "Mornin', officers," I said, nodding to Miller, who I knew from the occasional cattle auction. "Just enjoying the sunshine and collecting a private road maintenance fee on my own property. You boys want some coffee? It's a bit stale, but it's hot." Deputy Miller ambled over, taking the faded copy of my property deed and plat map that I held out. Deputy Davis hovered nearby, looking like he was itching to write a ticket for something. Anything. "Now, Hank," Miller said, his voice a low rumble. "Brenda here says you're running an illegal toll road." "Well, Jim," I said, using his first name, "this here part of the road where all these fine folks have to drive to get to their fancy new gate is on my land. Always has been. They're the ones who blocked my access further down, on the part of the road that is a shared easement. I'm just asking for a little contribution for wear and tear on my private property." I gave him my most innocent, law-abiding citizen look. Miller studied the papers, then looked at my setup, then back at Brenda, who was practically hopping with impatience. He scratched his chin. "Well, ma'am," he said to Brenda, "on the face of it, this part does appear to be Mr. Johnson's property according to these county records, and while this toll is, highly unusual, it ain't exactly a public road he's blocking if it's his private driveway he's put a gate on." Davis piped up. "But sir, is this official? Do you have permits for a toll operation, business licenses?" I shrugged. "Permits? For asking folks to chip in for using my driveway after they locked me out of it? Just seems like neighborly reciprocity to me. Besides, I'm thinking of it more as a ranch experience entry fee. Very exclusive. Helps pay for the, authentic rural ambiance." I winked. Miller coughed, and I could have sworn I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. "Ma'am," he told Brenda, his voice all official, "this seems to be a civil matter, a property dispute. You'll likely need to take it up with the courts if you feel Mr. Johnson is in the wrong." Brenda looked like she was about to spontaneously combust. "A civil matter? He's holding us hostage." "Not seeing any hostages, Brenda," I said cheerfully. "Just customers, some more willing than others." The deputies, unable to find any clear law I was breaking right then and there, especially since it was clearly my land they were all parked on, gave Brenda some pamphlets on civil dispute resolution, and prepared to leave. As Miller got back in his cruiser, he caught my eye and gave a very slight, almost imperceptible nod. I nodded back. "Small town, see? Some folks still understood property rights and didn't much care for uppity HOAs. Brenda, defeated for the moment, shrieked something about lawyers and lawsuits and stormed back to her SUV, after Gary, flustered, paid her $10 toll. The visit from the law and my apparent victory just made me bolder. If I was going to run a toll road, I might as well make it a proper toll road. That evening, I called Earl. Earl's a local character, a semi-retired, jack-of-all-trades contractor who's forgotten more about rigging things up than most people ever learn. His ethics are flexible, but his rates are reasonable, and he enjoys a bit of creative chaos. "Earl, it's Hank," I said when he answered, his voice gravelly. "Got a little project for you. Need to make my gate look a bit more toll boothy. And maybe a bigger sign. Something with flashing lights, perhaps. To really capture the spirit of the enterprise. Earl let out a wheezing chuckle. Flashing lights, you say, Hank? For that Whispering Pines crowd? This sounds like my kind of fun. You want it to play a little tune when the gate opens too? I got an old ice cream truck jingle somewheres. Let's not get carried away, Earl, I said, though the thought was tempting. Just sturdy and official looking, and maybe a bit annoying. Cash up front? Naturally. Earl showed up the next afternoon in his beat-up pickup, a collection of miscellaneous lumber, wires, and a knowing grin in the back. Together, we transformed my simple gate. Earl, with surprising ingenuity, rigged up a counterweighted arm that could be raised and lowered with an old garage door opener he'd salvaged. We painted a bigger, bolder sign. Hank's Highway official port of entry. Your entitlement ends here. Pay the man. Management reserves the right to refuse service to grumpy people. Below that, in smaller letters, complaints, take it up with Brenda. We even added a little roof over my lawn chair and a brand new tip jar for Blue, now labeled Blue's Biscuit and Bail Bond Fund. The HOA, of course, didn't stay quiet. Their lawyer, some city slicker named Lionel Pendleton III, started sending letters. Thick, creamy envelopes filled with legal jargon that basically translated to, "Stop it, or we'll sue your wranglers off." I used one to light the barbecue, read another one aloud to my cows. They seemed unimpressed. Gary tried the personal approach again. He shuffled up to the gate one afternoon, hat in hand, looking miserable. "Hank," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Well, she's very upset. This has become quite the situation." "It has indeed, Gary," I agreed. "Look, Hank, be reasonable. We're prepared to offer you a one-time payment for the inconvenience, say $200, to just take the gate down and we can all forget this happened." I looked at the sad little offering in my cash box. I'd made more than that before breakfast. $200, Gary," I said, shaking my head slowly. "Bless your heart. Gary, the price of inconvenience, not to mention the cost of lumber, paint, and Earl's valuable consultation services, has gone up considerably since this morning. Now, that'll be $10 for your passage, or are you planning on sprouting wings and flying over?" He sighed, a sound like air leaking from a month-old balloon, paid his $10, and trudged back to his car. The toll booth wasn't just a gate anymore. It was a statement. It was a daily, 24-carat, $10 at a time middle finger to the whole Whispering Pines philosophy. And I got to admit, even with the threats and the glares, it was the most fun I'd had in years. It's funny how a little bit of well-placed defiance can shake things up. My toll booth on Hank's Highway didn't just annoy the HOA potentates, it started to cleave the Whispering Pines community itself. Not everyone in that beige labyrinth was a Brenda clone. One morning, a minivan driven by a frazzled-looking mom with 3 kids in the back pulled up. She handed me a 10 and a folded piece of paper. "Don't tell Brenda," she whispered, eyes darting around. "But this is a petition a few of us signed against her plan to levy a special assessment to sue you. Keep up the good work." She winked and drove off. I unfolded the paper. Nearly 20 names. Well now. Then there was old Mrs. Henderson, a sweet lady with a prize-winning rose garden and a surprisingly rebellious streak. She'd always wave when she drove by my ranch pre-gate gate. Now, every time she paid her toll, she'd slip an extra $5 into the cash box. "For Blue," she'd say, patting my dog's head when he trotted over for his customary scratch. "And Hank, dear," she leaned in conspiratorially one day, her voice a papery whisper. "Brenda McMillan tried to fine me $50 last spring for unharmonious wind chimes. Said they clashed with the neighborhood's sonic aesthetic. Give 'em heck for all of us who can't." Even some of the contractors who had to come into Wispines started treating me like a folk hero. One fella, a plumber named Sal, always forgot to take his change from a 20. "Keep it, Hank," he'd bellow. "Entertainment tax." Of course, not everyone was a fan. Some residents got downright hostile. One guy in a red convertible, who always wore sunglasses even on cloudy days, started laying on his horn the second he turned onto my stretch and wouldn't stop till he was through the gate. Another lady took to flinging her $10 bill at me like it was contaminated. I just picked it up, smoothed it out, and wished her a blessed day. Killed him with kindness, or at least polite indifference. The local paper, the Cottonwood Creek Chronicle, got wind of the story. A young reporter, eager for a human interest piece that wasn't about the annual pie contest, came out. I gave her the grand tour of Hank's Highway, explained my side of things, made sure she got a good photo of Blue looking noble by the tip jar. The headline a few days later read, "Rancher's Revenge. Local man takes on HOA with toll road tactics." It even had a picture of Brenda McMillan looking like she'd swallowed a wasp, taken from a distance at an HOA meeting. That article brought a fresh wave of attention, some supportive, some condemning me as a crank. Either way, I was famous. Or infamous, depending on your perspective. Brenda and the HOA, naturally, escalated their efforts. The polite legal letters stopped. In their place came a thick packet delivered by a surly process server. A real bona fide lawsuit. Cease and desist. Private nuisance. Illegal business operation. Obstruction of a not-so-public way. They were throwing the whole legal kitchen sink at me. That one gave me pause, I won't lie. I'm a rancher, not a courtroom brawler. The thought of spending my savings, money I'd earmarked for a new tractor on lawyers' fees, made my stomach churn. Blue seemed to sense my worry, nudging his head under my hand more often. I went back to see Lawyer Bill. He read through the HOA's filing, his bushy eyebrows climbing higher with every page. "Well, Hank," he finally said, leaning back in his creaky chair, "they ain't fooling around this time. This Lionel Pendleton III, he's a shark. They got a decent argument on the illegal business operation part if you ain't got no permits. The private nuisance, that's subjective, but judges sometimes listen to folks whining about property values. The land, though? The land is yours. That's your bedrock." "So, what do I do, Bill?" I asked, feeling a bit like David facing Goliath. Only Goliath had a team of lawyers and a bottomless litigation budget. Bill tapped a pen against his teeth. "We fight it on the property rights. We countersue for trespass, for the illegal gate they put up blocking your easement. We make it so messy and expensive for them that they'll wish they'd never heard your name. You got any endangered species of gopher living on that patch of land they paved over? Sometimes that environmental protection stuff can throw a real legislative wrench in their gears. Bureaucracy loves bureaucracy," I sighed. "Endangered gophers, Bill? The only thing endangered around here is my patience and my bank account. But if you think we got a shot—" "There's always a shot, Hank," Bill said, a twinkle in his eye. "Especially when the other side is so darn sure they're right. They forget to check if they are right." The HOA didn't stop with the lawsuit. They started playing dirty. Suddenly, I got a visit from Animal Control, anonymous tip about neglected livestock. My cows, who are treated better than some people's children, were declared perfectly healthy, much to the officer's confusion about why he was even there. Then code enforcement showed up, another anonymous tip, this time about an illegal junkyard, my bone pile, where I keep old equipment I might salvage parts from. It's been there for 50 years. It was starting to wear me down. The constant vigilance, the simmering anger, the worry about the lawsuit. It was becoming less of a righteous, amusing crusade and more of a grim, costly battle. "They think they can break me, Blue," I told my dog one evening, watching the headlights of the Whispering Pines residence dutifully stopping at my gate. "They think I'll just give up, roll over. But this ain't just about a road anymore, is it? This is about not letting bullies in beige houses who don't know a damn thing about the real world tell a man what he can and can't do on his own land. My grandpappy didn't fight droughts and desperados, so I could surrender to a committee worried about aesthetic harmony. Blue licked my hand. He always knew what to say. The fight was far from over. The whole toll road saga had become the talk of Cottonwood County. You couldn't go into the feed store or the diner without someone asking for the latest update on Hank's last stand. Eventually, the county commissioner, a pragmatic fella named Henderson, who was more interested in keeping the peace and getting re-elected than in legal niceties, decided enough was enough. He strongly suggested a mediated town hall meeting. So there we were on a stuffy Thursday night, packed into the community hall. Most of Whispering Pines was there, looking like a PTA meeting that had taken a very wrong turn. A good number of local folks, my supporters, and the merely curious filled the rest of the chairs. It felt like a showdown at the OK Corral, only with less gunfire and more passive-aggressive sighing. Brenda McMillan, flanked by Gary and their smarmy lawyer, Lionel Pendleton III, presented the HOA's case first. Oh, she painted a picture. I was a lawless renegade, a neighborhood terrorist holding innocent families hostage with my illegal, unsightly, and frankly un-American toll booth. She spoke of plummeting property values, traumatized children who were now afraid of the grumpy rancher, and the general desecration of their suburban paradise. Pendleton chimed in with ominous references to torts and injunctions. When it was my turn, I didn't have any fancy charts or legal jargon. I just stood up, took off my hat, and spoke from the heart. "Evening, folks," I started. "My name is Hank Johnson. That land you all drive over to get to your homes, the bit where my gate is, that's been part of the Rocking H Ranch for over 100 years. My grandpappy used that road. My pappy used that road. And I was using it just fine till the Whispering Pines HOA decided their new pavement was more important than my property rights, and put up a gate locking me out of my main access." I laid out the whole story, simple and plain. Their unannounced paving, the gate that blocked me, my attempts to reason with them, and finally, my decision to implement the Access Facilitation Station. "Ma'am," I said, looking straight at Brenda, "with all due respect, what's un-American is fencing a man off his own property, ignoring his legal rights, and then bellyaching when he finds a creative way to point out your mistake. My toll booth might be a bit rustic, as you like to say, but it's a damn sight more honest than what your HOA tried to pull." The hall was buzzing. A few amens, and "You tell 'em, Hanks," came from the back. Mrs. Henderson actually stood up. "Brenda McMillan," she said, her voice surprisingly strong, "you and your committee have been bullying this neighborhood for years with your petty rules and your fines. Hank's just giving you a taste of your own medicine." That got a round of applause. Brenda's face was a mask of fury. Pendleton tried to object, but Commissioner Henderson waved him down. This wasn't a courtroom. Then Lawyer Bill, bless his cantankerous heart, stepped forward. He wasn't as flashy as Pendleton, but he had a trump card, and he played it beautifully. "Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen," Bill began, his voice dry as dust. "While Mr. Pendleton is very skilled at discussing nuisances, he seems to have overlooked a rather crucial document. This," he held up a magnified copy of an old county surveyor's map. "The original plat for the entire area is the official 1947 Master Plat Map, filed with the county when this whole section was first subdivided for a potential development, long before Whispering Pines was a twinkle in a developer's eye." He pointed to a clearly marked line. "This shows an explicit 60-foot wide, non-exclusive right-of-way easement granted to the parcel now known as the Rocking H Ranch, extending from the county road across what is now Whispering Pines property, directly to Mr. Johnson's homestead." What it doesn't show is any right for a subsequent development, such as Whispering Pines, to obstruct that primary easement with a gate. In fact, their gate, the one they put up before Mr. Johnson instituted his toll, is illegally impeding his documented pre-existing right-of-way. You could have heard a pin drop. Then, slowly, a murmur went through the crowd. Pendleton was sputtering, demanding to see the document. Brenda looked like she'd been slapped with a wet fish. Gary just seemed to shrink further into his chair. Furthermore, Bill continued, pressing his advantage, we have filed a countersuit this afternoon against the Whispering Pines HOA for illegal obstruction of easement, trespass, and damages. We are also petitioning the county to order the immediate removal of their illegal gate. The tide had turned. Suddenly, the HOA wasn't the aggrieved party. They were the ones in the legal hot seat. The thought of their own gate being declared illegal, plus a nasty countersuit, clearly terrified them. The fight went out of Brenda like air from a punctured tire. Commissioner Henderson, seeing his chance, quickly called for a recess and dragged both legal teams and me and Brenda into a side room. The negotiations were tense, but the balance of power had shifted dramatically. Pendleton huffed and puffed, but Bill stood firm. Our position is simple, Bill stated. Your gate comes down. Mr. Johnson is granted unfettered permanent access via his primary easement, and the HOA will issue a formal public apology to Mr. Johnson for the inconvenience and unwarranted legal action. Brenda, through gritted teeth, tried to argue for some compromise where both gates stayed. Now, Brenda, I said, unable to resist. My gate is on my land. Yours is illegally blocking my historic right-of-way. I don't see much room for compromise there, unless you want to start paying me a daily fee for the privilege of your gate, remaining on what amounts to an access route you're not fully entitled to block. I paused. And I'll need a gold-plated remote control for your gate if it stays, plus a lifetime supply of batteries. And that apology? I want it written in glitter. Delivered to my cows. They were very distressed by this whole affair. Okay, I didn't get the glitter apology for the cows, but after another hour of wrangling, we had a deal, written on county letterhead and signed by all parties. The Treaty of Hank's Driveway, I called it. Their main gate, the fancy electronic one, would be reconfigured. My original access path would become a dedicated, always open lane for me, marked Private Ranch Access Do Not Block. No keypads, no codes, just clear sailing. They also had to pay all my legal fees, plus a modest sum for damages and road wear, which was enough to buy that new tractor and ensure Blue had a lifetime supply of premium biscuits. And my toll booth? I agreed to dismantle it. Running it was getting to be a chore anyway, and I'd made my point, loud and clear. The next day Earl came by and we took down Hank's highway. It was a little bittersweet, like saying goodbye to an old friend. We kept the main sign, though, propped it up in the barn. A week later, the Whispering Pines gate had a new, unobstructed lane leading straight to my ranch entrance. The first time I drove through it, without stopping, without paying, it felt pretty darn good. Life on the rocking H went back to normal. Mostly. The cows still needed milking. The fences still needed mending. But things were different with the Whispering Pines folks. There was a new kind of respect, or maybe just healthy fear in their eyes when they drove past my place. Brenda McMillan crossed the street if she saw me in town. Gary just waved weakly. Mrs. Henderson still brought me pies. Sal the plumber always honked and gave a thumbs up. Even Deputy Miller, when he drove by on patrol, would sometimes slow down, catch my eye, and give a little tip of his hat. Every now and then, especially when I saw one of those expensive SUVs navigate the reconfigured entrance to their neighborhood, I'd glance over at that old sign in the barn. Hank's Highway, your entitlement ends here. And I'd chuckle. Because sometimes, to keep what's yours, to hold on to a little piece of history and a whole lot of principle, you gotta be willing to charge folks $10 to help them remember it. And sometimes, just sometimes, the little guy with a bit of stubbornness and a well-placed gait actually wins.